Uh, Look, moving to the business case, the 2020 medal win shared some elements of the financial approach that was taken to consider how we could do more eco-efficient comminution and processing and plant circuits. It really really thought about what could make business sense in terms of lower footprint mining and processing. And as a leader, what's your view on the business case for change to reduce energy, water emissions through that types of work? And what's the business case for that change more broadly by industry?
Well, for Newmont, ESG has always been a focus, and we've been putting a lot of effort into it for decades now. And quite frankly, we were involved heavily in ESG before it was popular. But we also knew the day would come when investors and communities would have higher expectations. And fortunately for Newmont, we were actually ahead of the curve because of the involvement that we literally started about 2 decades ago. So for me, the medal win highlighted the importance of looking for practical options for reducing our footprint, but it also had to include the financial case. So as you said earlier, it kind of wrapped those things together. I think that was important. And we also recognize that our investments need to have a forward-looking element. They need to be looking at what's going to be required and expected by communities in the arenas of social and environmental performance. And so not only is it just without thinking about what today will bring, but it's anticipating what tomorrow will bring, because many of our projects are heavily capital intensive and they're long-lived projects. So we can't just look at it for today. So I think that this is becoming an increasingly important aspect for the broader mining industry as well. It's only going to become increasing in focus in the coming years.
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges in the mining industry. We have high capex, long life projects, and so many things change outside of our control, commodities prices, and the world changes in those long life project timeframes. So anticipating what changes might occur during that timeframe is really key. It's really good to see that Newmont has shared in that CEEC Medal win how they're approaching the financial side, but also that others in the industry are beginning to share that more. We've seen some cases where the NPV uplift is absolutely compelling, up in the order of $500 million improvement by putting in place simple things like preconcentration on the right ore bodies. Not to say that there's not some technology hurdles in implementing that at scale, but there's some really exciting changes ahead, I think. You've worked on projects around the world, large and small, met so many people, huge range of cultures and perspectives, and no doubt you've seen a lot of change in technologies over the past 3 decades, and also really thinking future focused about this really exciting time of change. What do you think with technology change and putting those in place? What do you think is key to leading change with success?
Well, Alison, for me, it goes back to some things probably I even learned in Indonesia, which is you need to take the time to understand why things are the way they are, and recognize that things are the way they are for a reason, because I believe it's practically impossible to make lasting change unless you really understand the local context. And this is both from a perspective of why people currently think the way they do, but also to think about what would it take for them to envision a different future. If you don't take the time to understand that, it's just impossible to make any sort of lasting change, at least in my experience. And I've also recognized that there's just huge value in simply replicating best practice, which for many reasons seems very hard to do. Many companies have really struggled with this. So at Newmont, I believe we're hitting this head on, and we're being very intentional about what we refer to as our rapid replication process. And this recognizes that sharing of best practices isn't a natural human thing to do, regardless of what culture that you're in. And it needs to be formalized, and it needs to be embraced as something that's just part of a company's continuous improvement program. And so for me, it's kind of bundling all those things together as to what I see is key for leading successful change.
Yeah, it sounds like, really lasting change needs to understand people's needs, and really encouraging people to be open, contributing all of their ideas, and also really thirsty to learn and taking very much into account the community's needs and what they want us to be thinking about, so that we're in partnership with them as well. Look, is there anything else that you are excited or passionate about that you'd really like to share from your own experience or from Newmont's work?
Well, I think that one of the things, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, is that I get asked oftentimes, because of my role, what are one of the innovative things that we're doing, and what are we thinking about? What's next on the horizon? And I know what people want to hear is some bright, shiny, we're going to use satellites and lasers to mine. And I actually, when I boil it down, I find that it's oftentimes much simpler than that. And I know that's not necessarily a satisfying response for many people. I mean, there's the good, solid work that we're doing, that we're talking about, in the comminution space, that is just, what I would consider just good table stakes kind of work that people should be doing. But as I mentioned before, there's just incredible value in recognizing that a company the size of Newmont, or even larger companies, have excellent examples of best practice across their company. And the key is finding those and recognizing that they are best practice, and replicating those across the company. So that's what I'm excited about. And I think it absolutely has a very strong role to play in reducing our footprint. I mean, in particular, as it relates to the ESG elements of reducing energy in our greenhouse gas and our water consumption.
Yeah, look, I think you're right. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit for things that we can do on sites now, if we identify what those best practices are, and really bring not only shareholder value, but really begin to chip away and cumulatively improve the energy and emissions and footprint, and water as well. Companies as large as Newmont can have quite a big impact with small changes across so many sites. Mm-hmm. So that's fantastic. And I really commend you for being really wanting to drive the sharing of those across industry, and really encourage Newmont to continue to publish and support your people to do that, and others to share more from other companies as well, so we can tackle these shared industry challenges more quickly.